The biggest thing to happen to the internet in the past few years hasn't been the development of some new technology, but rather the stances which governing bodies and internet service providers are taking and attempting to mold the internet in very specific ways. To give you a little bit of history, the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, is presently the regulatory body governing the internet in the United States right now. The FCC has been around for almost a century now, and its role in the internet, much like its role in other media, has proven to be somewhat controversial. Governmental entanglement in media and journalism is something people are right to be somewhat wary of, regardless of which political party you side with. So why should we trust a governmental power to mess with something as pure, free, and democratic as the internet? The FCC was first gifted regulatory power over the radio in 1934 after the abolition of the Federal Radio Commission. With its new control over radio, it also gained control over telecommunications entirely. And this meant any transfer of data, be it image or sound, didn't make a difference. And that sounds like it would include the internet, but it actually, in fact, did not. But I'll get back to that later. It's important to understand that the point of the FCC's regulatory control over telecommunications was to monitor things like monopolies and broadcast quality. Now, as I mentioned previously, this control did not include the internet when it was first invented, and for a good while afterwards as well. This is because the internet, at its invention, was considered Title I, which meant information service instead of telecommunication service, which meant that it was beyond the monitor of governmental agencies. The FCC played a very minor role in the development of the internet as a structure until 2015, when they reclassified broadband internet as a telecommunication service rather than an information service. This was done in order to rule against a number of corporate oversteps. In other words, it was done to install net neutrality. So what is net neutrality, you might ask? This whole video has been going on, it's supposed to be topical, and yet I haven't said the word once. That's stupid. I should have mentioned it before. So, net neutrality is, in the most common terms and easiest to describe, an attempt to regulate ISPs, because presently they have an outrageous amount of control over consumers. It's pretty much absolute, considering the fact that there are very few real ISPs out there right now. So a company that has a close relationship with Hulu could boost Hulu's speed and then completely throw Netflix into the trash. And it's not necessarily only speed boosting and limiting of data, it's also completely disallowing people to visit sites depending on either how much you're spending or which ISP you're using. That level of power could actually limit the information, which is why the FCC had to step in, because they were fighting against an oligopoly. It's very illegal. It doesn't make much sense. It shouldn't exist. I'm saying it. I'm sorry. I got very opinionated, but honestly, it's why? It's very blatantly illegal. Anyway, this leads us to today. Now this is where it gets really fun. So, Ajit Pai, perhaps you've heard of him. He's an interesting fellow. Got a great history, this guy. Who is Ajit Pai? Ajit Pai. Let's get a little bit of a history lesson on Ajit Pai. Ajit Pai was a Verizon lawyer. And then in 2003, he decided, but of his own volition, that he wanted to be in politics. It took him, 2003 to 2012, that would be... It took him 9 years after deciding to get into politics, after leaving Verizon, to become a member of the FCC. And of course, it was 2012, so you're thinking, oh, well, who did that? Because you have to be appointed. Well, Obama did it. But Who'd he do it? Who'd he do it for? But Mitch McConnell. Now you'll notice 2012 to 2017, that includes 2015. You may notice this, I did. 2015, of course, is when they passed net neutrality and changed the internet from Title 1 to Title 2. Well, this happened with Ajit Pai on the board fighting against it. Then, fortunately for no one, Donald Trump elected him to be head of the FCC, which is why you see such a huge switch from 2015 to a mere 2 years later, 2017. It's not necessarily over, though. That's the important thing that you have to remember from this. At the end of the day, we don't know who's going to win. And I'm not going to tell you that you should be in favor of net neutrality, you shouldn't be. I do encourage you to at least look into the information that's out there, because I have presented a very small amount